Many new players are intimidated by GURPS' huge skill list. For me, it did the opposite. I was attracted and fascinated by it. Not every game should use all the skills though, and I have seen many times people asking for skill lists for certain genres. In my opinion, this is a bit silly. Do you really need to be told not to take computer operation in a medieval historical game, or farming in a game about special ops in the jungle? Nevertheless, genre books provide curated skill lists. GURPS Dungeon Fantasy 1 Adventurers, GURPS Monster Hunters 1 Champions, and so on. Most of the time I play fantasy games in D&D style settings, but that does not mean that I am using a Dungeon Fantasy skill list. Depending on the game itself, almost any skill can be taken. Also, I have adjusted some of the skills, added new specialties where I felt that they were necessary, and even introduced some new skills. Let's take a look at the GURPS skill list and see which skills are useful for D&D style games and which ones either aren't useful at all or are extremely situational. First skill is accounting. It's definitely not an adventuring skill, but it has its place in games about merchants and trade. Acrobatics should definitely be in your skill list, including its special versions, aerobatics and aquabatics. After all, D&D has many underwater and aerial races that might use this skill. Even astrobatics that was introduced in GURPS Space might work in extremely rare cases when spell jamming is happening. Acting is one half of the D&D bluff skill. It deals with long-term impersonations and deception. This is not the same as fast talk or performance, and cannot be used as an influence role. Administration, just like accounting, is not a skill for dungeon delving, but not every game is about looting tombs. If you are playing a noble or a businessman, you should put some points into the skill definitely. Alchemy is one of the iconic D&D skills that is actually rarely used in that game. If you watch my video about alchemy, you know that I reworked the standard alchemy system in GURPS to fit my vision better. GURPS Thaumatology suggests introducing specialties to the skill, so that's what I did. The standard alchemy is organic. There are also dark, metallic and psionic, and maybe someday I will add more. Each one of them defaults to others at -4. I have to know that dark and metallic alchemy are not D&D concepts, they were introduced in Pyramid. This once again shows the flexibility of GURPS. Even though I want to emulate D&D worlds, I can add things from other systems that I like, and those two alchemy articles would fit well into a D&D setting. In my opinion at least. You should remember that this skill is useful not only for crafting potions and elixirs, but also for identifying them. Thus, a point in this skill won't hurt even a mundane fighter. Animal handling definitely belongs on the list of useful skills. After all, can you imagine a druid or ranger without one? In a D&D game, the list of specialties will be long and diverse, because there are many weird animals. I want to explore this topic someday. Anthropology seems like an actually useful skill even in adventuring situations, but I do not remember ever seeing it on a character sheet. It serves as a knowledge skill about civilized races that do not really have their own expert skill specialty. I should keep this one in mind for the future. Archaeology sounds like something that should be often on the character sheet of your typical dungeon delver, but for some reason it isn't. It definitely should be on the list of useful skills. Architecture is helpful not only when you want to design a building, but also when you want to find a secret room or a structural weakness. Definitely has its place in a D&D style game. Area knowledge is a skill that almost every character must have. The details depend on the setting, but I wrote up some guidelines for Carolan, my own setting. The skill works as written, but some specialties deserve a special mention. Area knowledge Underdark, area knowledge Sea and area knowledge Sky are equivalent to a planet in terms of scope, but area knowledge skills tied to a specific layer of Underdark, Upper Dark, Middle Dark and Lower Dark are equivalent to a large nation. Each different plane has its own skill with its scope depending on the plane's size. For example, area knowledge Abyss would be equivalent to an interplanetary state, while a single layer of the Abyss would be equivalent to a large nation. Area knowledge Beator would be equivalent to a planet, but area knowledge Avernus to a large nation. Transitive planes such as ethereal plane are equivalent to a planet, but the demiplanes can range from a neighborhood to an interplanetary state. Armories should definitely be allowed. After all, how else would your character repair their gear or make their own weapons? You don't even have to limit the specialties much. The only one I cannot really see in D&D is force screens. But even battlesuits would work. D&D has golem armor that works like a GURPS battlesuit. There are some new specialties that I found in other GURPS books. Reflectors from GURPS Fantasy Tech 1 covers reflective heat rays. Vimana weapons from GURPS Vehicles Transports of Fantasy covers weapons mounted on Vimanas. I also use Armory Esoteric for things like holy water, aspergillum maces, stake bolts, and other similar gear. Artillery definitely belongs in a D&D world, but would rarely be found on an adventure character sheet. Bombs, cannon, catapult seem especially appropriate. As for the rest of the specialties, beams, guided missile, and torpedoes, they are unlikely to be seen in the game. I know that anachronistic high-tech or even ultra-tech gear in D&D worlds exists, but they still might be useful in extremely rare situations. Now that I think about it, the beams specialty could work for some ritual spells. Artist, all specialties of it, can be used in a D&D world. I even had to introduce a new specialty for a Forgotten Realms spell that I was asked to convert, the Portrait spell. Astronomy has existed since the ancient times, and it has its place in a D&D world. In my setting there are astral mages called Magi, who use the skill to improvise spells. Ultra-hypnosis even exists as a skill in D&D. Works well not only for psionic characters, but also for monks and similar chi practitioners. Beam weapons can be used even without anachronistic ultra-tech, as there are some magical weapons in D&D that would work well with this skill. For example, the ether blades of the ether gods, but even then, this is an extremely situational skill. Bicycling probably shouldn't be on the list. However, I can imagine a D&D artificer inventing a bicycle, so who knows? Bioengineering might seem like an inappropriate skill, but is it really? D&D and Pathfinder are full of mages, druids and alchemists, designing new life forms, growing grafts, cloning themselves, and so on. I can recall the Fleshcrafter prestige class in D&D, and the Drow alchemical Fleshcrafters in Pathfinder, so why should this skill be disallowed? I have not explored these concepts in full yet, so I will not provide a list of appropriate specialties and defaults, but the skill definitely belongs in the D&D world. Biology works as is, but it should be noted that instead of specializing by planet type, a character might take a planar specialization such as Biology Abyss or Biology Elemental Plane of Water. Blind finding existed as a feat in D&D, so why not leave this cool skill in? Blowpipe is an interesting ranged weapon skill. Be sure to check out Pyramid 333 for new options. Boating definitely has a place in a D&D world, but probably only limited to sailboat and unpowered specialties. The hydrofoils, motorboat, and large powerboat may only be useful in extremely rare cases with anachronistic high-tech. Body control works for monks and similar characters with chi powers. Remember that body control can be used instead of HT, if higher, when checking for crippled chi powers and abilities. Body language is a good social skill. Body sense is useful because there's many ways for characters to teleport. It might also be useful on planes with subjective gravity, such as the elemental plane of air. Bolas is a skill that doesn't have a reason not to be on the list of allowed skills. Bone carving is a new skill from GURPS Lands Out of Time. This is something like a TL0 version of Machinist and Armory, and I can definitely see it being used by the primitive D&D people. Bow should be allowed. Bow slingshot specialty from GURPS High-Tech could exist too, if rubber-like materials have been synthesized by alchemists, for example. If you watched the recent D&D movie, you probably saw a slingshot being used. Boxing definitely has a place. It's a rarely used unarmed skill in my experience, but it is not a reason to remove it. Brain hacking probably should be left out. Again, anachronistic tech might exist, but that's extremely rare. Brainwashing definitely can work even as a mundane skill in a D&D world. You have to decide on the specifics and assign a default. I did the following. Brainwashing uses various hypnotic techniques that usually are used by villains. While this skill is typically used by wizards specializing in mind control magic, priests of malevolent deities, mesmerists, and telepaths, it is a mundane phenomenon that cannot be dispelled by counter magic or other anti-power measures. Brainwashing defaults to hypnotism -6. Brawling is one of the essential skills, do not leave it out. Breaking Blow, just like most other esoteric skills, should stay unless you are replacing them with powers as per Chi Sorcery from Pyramid 3 105. However, since this is a supernatural skill, you should specify the power source. It could work as a magical skill, as a Chi skill, a psionic skill, or even a divine skill. This is important for talent and countermeasures. Breath control is a very useful skill, especially for spellcasters. Recovering 1 FP in only 2 minutes is nothing to sneeze at. Camouflage should stay. Carousing definitely should stay. This is basically what Gather Information skill did in D&D, but slightly expanded. Carpentry and cartography should stay. Chemistry might have a place in a D&D world, but I can see it being merged with alchemy. Gunpowder requires chemistry, but why can't alchemists do the same? It's all up to you. Climbing and cloak stay. Combat art and combat sport also should stay. They definitely have a place in a D&D world, but your typical dungeon dweller will not have any of these skills. Computer hacking, computer operation, and computer programming either should be removed from the list or kept there for those extremely rare situations with anachronistic tech. Connoisseur and cooking stay. Counterfeinting is a neat rogue skill that has a place in a D&D world. Crewman is a skill that can work in a D&D world too. Mostly it's seamanship's specialty, but airshipmen and submariner can work for cutting-edge artificers. Spacer is only appropriate for anachronistic ultratech. I also added a new specialty from GURPS Vehicles Transports of Fantasy, Flying Sailor. The skill of operating anchors, hatches, mooring lines, pumps, sails, windlasses, etc. aboard a large aerial vessel such as a Zakhoon windship or a spelljammer. Criminology is an appropriate skill for investigators and maybe even town guard captains. Don't forget that Pathfinder actually has an investigator class. Crossbow is one of the essential skills. Crossbow spear gun specialty from GURPS High Tech, however, is only appropriate if anachronistic equipment can be encountered. Cryptography should stay. Remember that decipher script used to be a skill in D&D, and that most wizards have their spellbooks encrypted, so this skill might be useful to wizards. Current affairs is another skill that most characters should have. Any specialty can work in the D&D world, but current affairs regional probably is the most common one. Current affairs, science and technology could have a magical variant. Dancing should stay, detect lies should stay. This skill along with body language is what sense motive in D&D does. Diagnosis, diplomacy, disguise should stay, and even dreaming should stay. Remember in D&D 3.0? Lucid dreaming was a skill. Driving is going to be one of the rarely used skills. Cutting-edge artificers might be able to invent something like a pedal-tech automobile from GURPS Vehicles Transports of Fantasy to justify allowing driving automobile. Apparatus of Qualish and similar devices could use driving mecha. GURPS Fantasy Tech 1 also introduces a new skill specialty that I have actually seen in use in my game. The book does not provide any defaults, so I had to do it myself. I think Eberron had trains, or was that bus lag? So driving locomotive might be useful as well. Dropping should stay, economics should stay, but it will be a rarely useful skill. Electrician, electronics operation, electronics repair, that's an anachronistic skill that probably will not be useful. Engineer, however, should stay, but some of the specialties might only be relevant for anachronistic tech. electrical, electronics, microtechnology, nanotechnology, parachronics, psychotronics, robotics, temporal, and many vehicle types. However, the vehicle type specialty gets the following new vehicle types: flying ship, land sailor, ornithopter, and vimana, and I also added a new specialty, golems. Enthrallment skills, captivate, persuade, suggest, sway emotions, are essential bardic skills. If they are used as bardic skills, consider them magical. They could work with different power sources as well. Trickster deities may give them to their priests. Psis could subtly control minds of others with the skill, etc. Environmental suit is one of the extremely situational skills. Battlesuit specialty can be used to operate golem armor. Vac suit specialty is used for cohorty resin suits. Everything else is only useful with anachronistic tech. Erotic art and escape should stay. Esoteric medicine can operate as first aid skill, and I also included some mandatory specialties inspired by GURPS Fantasy Tech 1, The Edge of Reality: Chi, Druidic, Gnoll, and Holy. Exorcism should stay. Expert skill also should stay, but oh boy! This is where I put most of the knowledge skills from D&D. I reworked them all trying to cover everything, and I allow optional specialties for certain skills where noted. This is a list of skills that I use, but other specialties are possible. Artifice. You possess knowledge about various clockwork devices, enchanted items, and constructs. A successful roll may allow you to identify a magic item, find the weak spot of a golem, or learn a clockwork device's function. The optional specialties include constructs and enchanted items. Bardic lore is a skill from GURPS Fantasy. Celestials. You possess knowledge about various good outsiders, their abilities, weaknesses, and relations to each other. The optional specialties include angels, archons, eladrins, and cardinals. Chi represents knowledge of the Chi techniques. The skill can be used to identify Chi abilities and answer questions about monastic traditions. Dragons. You possess knowledge about various dragons, their abilities, weaknesses, and relations to each other. The optional specialties include arcane dragons, catastrophic dragons, chromatic dragons, epic dragons, pharaoh's dragons, gem dragons, land dragons, linorms, long dragons, metallic dragons, outer dragons, planar dragons, sea serpents, worms, and lesser dragon kind. Elementalism. You possess knowledge about various elemental entities, places, and processes. The optional specialties include elementals, energons, and genies. Fiends. You possess knowledge about various evil outsiders. The optional specialties include demodons, demons, devils, divs, oni, and yugoloths. Hoplology. This is a skill from GURPS martial arts. Incarnum. The study of incarnum. This skill can be used to identify a soul meld or incarnum-infused creature or item. Monitors. You possess knowledge about the various neutral outsiders. The optional specialties include Aeons, Camarel, Real Money, and Death Messengers. Natural beings. You possess knowledge about various nature-related beings. The optional specialties include Fae, Giants, and plant creatures. Mundane animals are covered by the Naturalist skill. Oozes. You possess knowledge about various slimes, oozes, jellies, and molds. Paragons of Law. You possess knowledge about various lawful outsiders. The optional specialties include Formians, Inevitables, and Modrons. Phrenology. Phrenology is an occult theory often practiced by seers and psychic spellcasters. This skill exists only in the 3rd edition of GURPS, in GURPS Steampunk, but I have expanded it a bit here. Planology represents knowledge of the cosmology. This skill can be used to recognize which plane of existence you are on, determine the plane of origin of an outsider, and answer many other plane-related questions. The optional specialties include demiplanes, the inner planes, the outer planes, and the transitive planes. Psionics. This is the study of psionic mind and brain. Slaadi. You possess knowledge about the Slaadi, their abilities, weaknesses, and relations to each other. Teratology. You possess knowledge about the various magical monsters that do not have an aberrant nature. The optional specialties include hags, lycanthropes, magical beasts, and rakshasa. Thanatology is a skill from GURPS Dungeon Fantasy IX Summoners. Transitive threats. You possess knowledge about the various outsiders native to the transitive planes. The optional specialties include Aethergons, Gith, and Neras. Ultratech represents knowledge of some anachronistic gear. Unnatural beings, you possess knowledge of the various unnatural monsters. The optional specialties include aberrations and the far realm entities. Explosive stays, but only explosives, demolition and explosive fireworks are widely used. Everything else is anachronistic tech. Falconry should stay. I think you could even introduce new specialties, such as Archaeopteryxes or small pteranodons, or similar creatures. Farming should stay. It's not a dungeon delving skill, but not all games are about dungeon delving. Fast draw definitely stays. Do not forget that GURPS martial arts greatly expand the list of specialties with Balisong, Flexible, Shuriken, Stone, and Tonfa. Shields Up also adds fast draw shields. I also add 3 more specialties: Potion, Spell Component, and Wand. Fast Talk definitely stays. Fast Talk and Acting is what Bluff in D&D does. Filch should stay, just like some medical skills. I often see the skill combined with Sleight of Hand and Pickpocket. If you do that, you'll get the D&D Sleight of Hand skill. Finance is another skill that stays but probably is rarely used. Fire Eating is one of those skills that you forget about right after you read them. A weird skill, but I see no reason to remove it. First Aid, Fishing, Flight, they definitely stay. Flint Napping is another new skill from GURPS Lands Out of Time. It definitely could work for primitive people. Flying Leap is another esoteric skill that fits monks and ninjas. Just like Breaking Blow, it can have different power sources. Forced Entry should stay. Forensics, however, probably should not exist in a D&D world. But Forgery definitely stays. After all, D&D has the Forgery skill. Fortune telling should stay, but you should also decide if it's a real divination or not. I added a new specialty, 3 Dragon Ante. Forward Observer can exist in a D&D world if there are means to signal the artillery. Will be a rarely used skill anyway. Free Fall should stay. It's an extremely situational skill that might be useful even without anachronistic tech. After all, there are spells that negate gravity. Fright Handling, Gambling, Games, they stay, but you should introduce some specialties for the games skill. I found many in-universe D&D games that can serve as specialties. Chaos and Strife, Compass Points, Dragon Chest, Lord's Ladder, Merchant's Dice, Midlin, Red Bug Spider, Shelza Ear, 3 Dragon Ante, Treasure Chest, War's Day, Windroom Poker, and Zorvintal. Gardening, Garrote, Geography, they stay. Geology also can be used in a D&D world, but instead of specializing by planet type, you can also take a planar specialization, such as Geology Arborea or Geology Elemental Plane of Earth. Gesture and Group Performance, they can be used. Gunner should stay. Gunner Catapult and Gunner Rockets exist on low TL, but the rest of them can only work with anachronistic tech. But GURPS Fantasy Tech 1 also introduces the Mirror specialty. Guns should stay, but not all specialties exist on low TL. Grenade Launcher, Low, LMG and SMG are only useful with anachronistic tech. Gyrock, Musket, Pistol, Rifle, Shotgun, these can work on TL 3 and 4. Don't forget that GURPS Low Tech and GURPS High Tech introduce new specialties that can work in D&D worlds. Gun and Wrist Gun. Hazardous Materials has a magical specialty that might be useful. The rest of them should either be removed or used with anachronistic tech. Heraldry is an important skill that is often overlooked. Do not remove it, just make it matter. Herb Lore should stay. Hidden Lore should stay, and you should introduce some specialties. I use the following ones in my games. Creation Lore. You know the secrets of the multiverse, such as the dimensional vortex, the old ones, the dreadnoughts, the luminous being, and the history of the multiverse's creation and development. Distant worlds. You have detailed knowledge of worlds other than Karilan, be they different planets or alternate material planes. You may also know how to get to these remote places. Divine Mistakes. You have detailed knowledge of creatures that were deemed mistakes by their divine creators. You may know the whereabouts of such abominations' prisons, and the abilities and weaknesses of such creatures. Dragon lore. You know the secrets of the dragons that are unknown to most non-dragons. You possess knowledge of the various unique offspring of Tiamat and Bahamut, the lord of the Pharaoh's dragons, dragon overlords and dragon rulers. I talked about dragon overlords in my Dragonlance video, and dragon rulers is an interesting concept from Mystara, and it's probably hidden lore for real-world tabletop RPG players. Elder Eels is a good hidden lore specialty, and the last one is remote planes. You have knowledge of various planes that lie outside of the Great Wheel. Then hiking, history, hobby skill, holdout, housekeeping, hypnotism, they should stay. Hypnotic hands is a new esoteric skill from GURPS martial arts, and it's a very cool one. Just like other esoteric skill, different power sources are possible. Immovable stance is another esoteric skill, and the same applies to it. Innate attack should stay, but do not forget that GURPS furries added a new specialty, spray. Intelligence analysis, interrogation, intimidation, they stay without changes. Invisibility art is another esoteric skill, and again it can be used with different power sources. Jeweler, judo, jumping, karate, they stay without changes. Kiai is another esoteric skill. Knot tying, lance, lasso, law, leadership, leatherworking, lifting, they stay without changes. Light walk is another esoteric skill. Linguistics, lip reading, liquid projectors should stay, as even flamethrowers exist on low TLs. However, I can imagine some tinkers coming up with devices that use sprayer, squirt gun, or water cannon. Literature stays. Lizard climb is a new esoteric skill from GURPS martial arts. Lockpicking, machinist, makeup, market analysis, masonry, they all have a place in the D&D world. Mathematics can be used, but only the applied specialty is really useful as a prerequisite for the astronomy skill. Computer science, cryptology, and statistics probably should be removed. Mechanic should stay, but not all specialties will exist on low TL. The vehicle type specialty gets the following new vehicle types: flying ship, land sailor, ornithopter, and Vimana. Meditation should stay on your list. Meditation is also used for hardcore improvisation by mystics, priest, and shugenjas. In addition, it can be used instead of will, if higher, when checking for crippled chi powers and abilities. Melee weapon skills should stay. The only one that only works with anachronistic tech is monowire whip. The rest, in force sword and force whip, can be used on low TL. Do not forget that GURPS martial arts also has a force saber skill that I have never ever seen used. Mental strength is another esoteric skill. Merchant and metallurgy should stay, but the latter skill gets the crystal specialization. Meteorology should stay as weather sense. Mimicry, mind block, mount, musical composition, they stay without changes. Musical influence, just like the enthrallment skills, are essential bardic skills. Musical instrument should stay. Check out GURPS Low-Tech Companion 1 for a multitude of specialties. Naturalist should stay, but instead of specializing by a planet type, you can specialize by a plane, such as Naturalist Beastlands or Naturalist Elemental Plane of Air. Navigation stays, even navigation space is useful in spell jamming campaigns. Navigation hyperspace might work with anachronistic tech. A new specialty is required. Navigation phlogiston is used to locate crystal spheres in the flow. Navigation phlogiston has no default. Net, observation, occultism, packing, paleontology could stay on the list, but paleontology should only have paleoanthropology, paleobotany, and paleozoology. Micropaleontology requires anachronistic tech. Panhandling should stay. Parachuting is a rarely used skill, but rigid parachutes, simple air brakes, and gliding cloaks do have a place in a D&D world. Check them out in GURPS Fantasy Tech 1. Parry missile weapon should stay. Performance should stay. Pharmacy should only have the herbal specialty. Philosophy definitely stays. I found that the Planescape factions work well as philosophy specialties. Athar, Bleak Cabal, Doomguard, Fated, Fraternity of Order, Free League, Godsmen, Harmonium, Mercy Killers, Revolutionary League, Sign of One, Society of Sensation, Transcendent Order and Zaozi texts. I also found the following D&D specialties: 1,000 Pins and Needles, Elementalism, Fist of Zookan, Guiding Hand, Infinite Harmony, One Mind with Many Voices, School of Unmatched Excellence, The Path of 37 Obstacles, The Return to Center, Uniting Opposing Forces. Physician doesn't really exist on low TL. Physics should stay in its basic form. Physiology should stay. D&D worlds are populated with a wide variety of creatures with different physiologies. Targeting vitals and brain sometimes is not straightforward. For example, a character without physiology Arania would probably not know that the Arania's brain is located in the hump instead of the head, and hence would not be able to target it, unless by rolling the hit location randomly. By knowing an appropriate specialty of physiology, a character might be able to target special organs to disable biological powers or abilities. Pickpocket should stay, many combine it with filch and sleight of hand. Piloting is a rarely used skill in the context of D&D worlds. Piloting Glider is used for gliding cloaks and burgliders from GURPS Fantasy Tech 1. The rest only makes sense with anachronistic tech. This skill also gets new specialties that I found on some Planescape to GURPS conversion site. Broom, Carpet, and I also added Ornithopter, Spelljammer and Vimana. Poetry should stay, why not? Poisons also is an essential skill. Drugs are created using the default specialty, but the skill gets new specialties, and I even might add in more in the future when I get to Pathfinder poisons. Magic-infused poisons, positoxins, psychic poisons and ravages. Politics should stay, why not? Power blow, precognitive block, precognitive parry, pressure points, pressure secrets, all are esoteric skills. Precognitive block is a skill from Pyramid 3-9. Pressure secrets also can target physical chi abilities by striking the vitals or mental abilities by striking the skull. Professional skill, propaganda, prospecting, psychology, public speaking also stay, and push is another esoteric skill. Religious ritual is altered in my games. I use religious ritual with specialties based on pantheons, such as religious ritual core pantheon or religious ritual elven pantheon, but I also allow optional single deity specialties to downgrade the skill's difficulty from hard to average. For example, religious ritual Moradin is an average difficulty skill. Religious ritual Druidic and religious ritual Spirit could be used as a generic nature and spirit worship skills. Research and writing should stay, and there are many different writing specialties in D&D worlds. I should explore this topic someday. Ritual magic skill exists in my games, but it is not used for ritual magic from GURPS Magic. This skill has the following specialties: blood magic, channeling and gem magic, and I think I might add some more soon. Running, savoir faire, scrounging should stay, but savoir faire should probably get the magical specialty. Scuba only works with anachronistic gear, so you might want to remove this skill. Search should stay, and Search and Rescue is a new skill from GURPS Disasters Hurricane, and I think you can use it in a D&D world. Sensitivity is an esoteric skill that you can use for your monks. Sewing, Sex Appeal, Shadowing and Shield should stay, but do not forget the GURPS Low-Tech Companion 2 introduced a new specialty for Shield, Gauge. Ship Handling is a skill that can work in a D&D world, but mostly it's ship specialty, but airship and submarine can work for cutting-edge artificers. Spaceship and starship are only appropriate for anachronistic ultra-tech. I also added a new specialty from GURPS Vehicles Transports of Fantasy, Flying Ship. Singing, skating, skiing, sleight of hand, sling, smith should stay, but I also introduced the smith crystal specialty. Smuggling, sociology, soldier, spear thrower also should stay. Speed reading might seem like a useless skill, but it helps wizards prepare spells from their spellbooks better and faster. Sports should stay. I should find some D&D sports to create a list of specialties. Stage combat, stealth, strategy should stay. Even the space specialty can be used for spelljammer combat. Streetwise should stay, and submarine even should stay, but only the unpowered specialty that was introduced in GURPS low-tech. The rest are only used for anachronistic gear. Sumo wrestling should stay, use it more. Surgery should stay. D&D has a lot of grafting going on, so I introduced the following specialties: elemental grafting, embedding, flesh grafting, golemics, necrografting, phytografting, and vile deformity. Survival and swimming, they definitely have a place, and symbol drawing greatly depends on the magic system in use. I use this skill for the following purposes. This is the primary spellcasting skill for binders, runecasters, and rune priests. Rune priests have specialties that correspond to a single deity of the dwarven, elven, giant, and illuminant pantheons. Non-rune priest divine spellcasters can use this skill as well, by taking 2 seconds to trace divine runes in the air with a free hand and making a successful symbol drawing roll. Such a spellcaster can improve the next casting roll by 1, as long as it is made within 5 seconds. A failed roll results in a -2 penalty to the casting roll instead. In addition to the deity-specific specialties for rune priests, this skill has the following specialties: Bereg Arnath, the specialty used for sigil carvers. That's something from the 4th edition of D&D, I will talk about it later someday. Binding, psionic glyphs, Qualithar, summoning circles, Thuli-Vantu, Tirsu, and Undrask. Tactics, teaching, teamster should stay. Thaumatology definitely stays. I also allow taking an optional specialization for a type of magic such as shadow magic, blood magic, conjuration, evocation, etc. Theology works identical to religious ritual. It's based on pantheons, and you can take an optional specialty to downgrade the difficulty from hard to average for a single deity. Throwing art, thrown weapon should stay. Throwing art is an esoteric skill, and thrown weapon has new specialty in GURPS low-tech, Disc. GURPS low-tech Companion 2 also introduces a new specialty Sword, and Shields Up introduces a new specialty Shield. Tracking, traps should stay. Typing is one of those skills that can be safely removed in my opinion. Urban survival, ventriloquism, veterinary should stay. Weird science maybe has a place in a D&D world. I don't know. Wrestling, writing, they definitely stay. Zen archery is another esoteric skill, and I also found a Zen spell casting variant skill that used for spells. And finally, I also introduced a new skill, use enchanted item. I talked about it before, but you can see the description on the screen. In the end, you can see that I barely remove anything from the skill list. The point of this video is not to give a specific skill list, but to show that almost any skill can be used in an appropriate game. The skill list depends less on the genre but on the game itself. I still find the idea of pre-written skill list puzzling, so I do not know why the hell I even wrote the script for this video and recorded it. It's almost 40 minutes long. But anyway, thank you for watching, especially if you watched it in the entirety. Have a nice day, and I'll see you later.